G'day. If you're in the market for some cheap rocker switches, you're doing some electrical work on your car, maybe you want an additional cigarette lighter plug, maybe you want a USB socket that you're adding, but you're doing a few different things. So you might want to, you might want some additional switches, you might want multiple plugs in the back of an SUV or maybe in the back of a utility vehicle, whatever it is, but you need multiple electronic components. Here's something that is a good way of saving some money. In Australia, you can go to whatever your automotive retailer is of choice. You might go to Supercheap Auto or Autobarn or Repco or whatever to buy rocker switches. So rocker switches just like that, rocker on, rocker off, positive, negative, and then a positive for illumination if you want that. You know, you can buy them, you know, you'll probably pay plus or minus $10 per switch. Now on our Project 6-seater, we've recently just done a quick video on how we wired in the electrics for it and ran the wiring through the headboard. Now to do that, I needed 3 switches. I needed the switch for the roof lights, I needed the switch for the work lights, and I needed the switch for my power socket. So I needed 3 switches. So that was going to cost me in well excess of $30 at my local retailer, just automotive retailer, just paying sticker price. That seemed a little bit excessive to me. So I had a look online and you can get these things. You'll see there's a few things missing from this. This is just a panel, an accessories panel. And it came with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rocker switches on the top. And then down the bottom, you've got a digital volt meter, volt gauge. So it's just a digital readout. You've got a cigarette lighter plug, and then you've got a USB socket as well, which I'm about to put in the Hilux. And I did want one of these. I was originally going to go with just a cigarette lighter in the back, but if you watch that video, you'll see I changed my mind and went Anderson plug and cigarette lighter. I run an Evercool fridge. And my Evercool, I'm quite the fan of it, should do a review on it. My Evercool, you can run it on either. It came factory with a cigarette lighter plug and with Anderson, and 10 times out of 10, if I've got the option, I'd rather run it on an Anderson plug. Anderson plugs, they click in, they don't fall out. Cigarette lighter plugs, they stick out. Anderson plugs are a lot more robust in my opinion. So, and they're easy to wire. So, and if you've got a crimping tool, they're extra easy, but you can basically wire them even if you've just got a vise, or if you're really stressed, you can do it with a pair of pliers if you've got a reasonable grip. But anyway, or solder would be best. But regardless, if you need to do a Anderson plug, it's pretty easy to crimp the terminals. But so I didn't use that. But my original plan was to go 3 switches, and then I'd have a cigarette lighter plug in the back. I put a USB in the car, and so of this kit I was going to use most of the components of it. I don't really care about the digital readout, although maybe I'll put it in there because I have it. What the heck, might be useful. This all comes wired to one outlet. It's all chopped to heck now because I've pinched all the switches off it. But there's your positive and negative. So this is wired in parallel with all the different things, and then a whole bunch of positive fused leads coming off the top with a whole bunch of stickers to change it over. So this would be made to put on in the tray of the tub of a ute, or on the headboard, or you might put it on a flat panel in the back of your SUV or something. Maybe you'd wire it in the boot if you've got a hatchback, you've got a nice flat panel. All you need is positive and negative in, and then you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 power outlets on switches. You'll have a voltmeter, you'll have a cigarette lighter plug, and you'll have 2 USBs at 2.4 amps, 2.1 amps, 5 volts, 2.1 amps, which should be enough to charge your phone. Watch wary of those cigarette lighter plugs that are only 1 amps. Probably not going to be enough nowadays, but 2.1 will be fine. So you can just run that as a panel, or you can do what I did and you can just pop all the switch gear out and use it individually. So if you want this here cost me about $27. So just a little bit over the cost of 2 switches. I had this delivered to my door, and I got the USB plug. I got a cigarette lighter plug, which I'm not going to use. I will use it eventually. I don't need it for this particular project, but I'll need to put a cigarette lighter plug on something sooner or later. So I'll use that then. Voltmeter I don't really care too much about, so I might just use that for, for giggles. And I've got 2 switches spare. So this is, if you want to do some electrical work on your car, our temptation could be to look at that and go, you know what, don't really need all that crap. But if you needed, 3 switches, just the 3 switches alone, buying those 3 switches, I get this and I've got change off what I'd pay retail. I'm not going to use the plate, I'm not going to use the stickers, but I get that for free, which I will use. I get the the cigarette lighter socket, which I won't use now, but I will use at some point in the future, and I get it for free. The downside with these sorts of cheapies is you want to check that the switches are actually rated for the elements. As you'll see in my ute, where I put the switches, they are on the outside of the vehicle, they're not on the inside. So far they've held up okay, but we'll see how they last long term. That's going on the interior, so that doesn't matter, but you do need to be wary of that. But also the fuses that you get, the inline fuses, they actually come with the fuses already in. So that's not of no value. I will use all of these over time too. Good thick gauge wiring, so you can use that for something. They've already got a terminal crimped on them, so that's quite a handy addition on its own. So I've got 5 of those and I haven't used any of them yet. So all the other stuff I fused further back, but that's not an unhelpful piece. And then the rest of the wiring I don't really care too much about, but that's a really, really nice piece of equipment to buy if you're going to do any electrical wiring on your ute. I think they're this is a really good thing to keep an eye out for. Heck, once I start to use once I've used all the switches on these, I will probably just buy another one and chuck in my drawer that I have all my auto electrical stuff in, and I'll start rating it again, because I always use rocker switches and I'm always looking for additional plugs to put in things. So nice addition, very cheap. The price of the switches alone is worth the price of admission, and it's well worth your consideration. If you can mount it and you do need 5 outlets for power, this is a pretty good option. You can get these in lots of different formats, like brands sell them as well, like Narva or that Adventure Kings mob, the 4x4 Super Center. They sell one, but it's far more expensive, but it's effectively the same bit of gear. It's just in a slightly different configuration. The one downside with this one is that the voltmeter is always on. You can always see it. So that's a little annoying, always having that running, in my opinion. But all you'd need to do for that is just put a switch on it, wire it into one of your switches, and that would deal with that problem if you didn't want the voltmeter running all the time. But as it sits, if you just wired it into positive as it came, that would be running all the time. Now that might be a good thing for you if you're running a fridge or something, you want to monitor it as you go. But for me, I'd probably put a switch on it so I can turn it on and off. But regardless, it's a handy bit of gear. They're pretty cheap. So far, I've had the switches on for, 4 months now. And even exposed to the elements, they've been fine. So we'll see how they last. If they completely go to custard, I'll update and say, don't do this unless you're using it on an interior setup. But for the moment on exterior, they're absolutely fine. But I do have them relatively protected, and they're not in direct sunlight or anything like that. They are pretty protected where they are mounted out of the way and hidden, as you'll see on the tray video. So hope this was useful for you. Keep an eye out for something like this. If you've got recommendations like that, let us know, because components like this, where you can get more things that you'll use over time for a really cheap price, they can be quite helpful to have lying around, even if you progressively rate it like I have with this one. So I hope this was useful for you. Thanks for watching.